Hi, second grade. Give yourself a big cheer. Woohoo! You have made it to your very last Wit and Wisdom lesson of this school year. So stay tuned so you can wrap up all of your learning in the last couple of weeks. You guys have done an amazing job. You all deserve a pat on the back for sticking with this, even though it's been very hard. You guys have done just a really wonderful job on keeping up with your work and keeping your learning going, even though it's been very hard. All right, so let's get this last lesson underway. I'm going to share my screen with you. So today we are going to still be talking about bone button borscht and about stone soup. We're just going to be wrapping up the two stories and thinking about how the stories were the same and how they were different and what the essential meaning is. So what is the big takeaway that you learned from these books? Okay, so what are you going to need? You need your paper and a pencil, your learning partner, and make sure you have a quiet, comfortable space that you can concentrate. If you need any of those items, just go ahead and pause the video and come back when you are ready to move on. Okay, so what are our goals for today? Well, by the end of today, I want you to be able to recount the stories Bone Button Borscht and Stone Soup. So recount, remember, means that we are going to retell. So you're going to be able to tell what the overall story was about of each book to your learning partner. Okay, so be able to tell me what was happening in each of those books. And I want you to, we're going to look back on all the new knowledge and skills that you've learned over the last few weeks when we were reading these books. So if you remember back when we started out Module 4, we learned about the digestive system and how food nourishes our body, right? So what did we learn? We learned that when we eat food, we digest it, and that food gives us energy, so it nourishes our body because it gives us energy to grow. But in these two stories, we learned a little bit, some different things about food and how it nourished our community, right? So we said, how did food nourish us? Well, we eat it, and it gives us energy and helps us live and grow and stay healthy. But in these two stories, how did it nourish the communities? So all those groups of people, the townspeople, how did they get nourishment from that? So turn to your partner and tell your partner some of the ways that food can nourish a community. So how did those soups bring the communities together and nourish them? Maybe you said that it brought them all together out of their homes and helped them share. Or maybe you thought that the food helped them learn to care for others who needed help. Maybe they learned to be more generous. So that nourished them in a way that was more than just eating food and staying alive, right? Okay, so how did these two texts, once you were finished reading these two books, how did they build my knowledge of food nourishing a community? So what were some of the ways that we learned that the beggar and the soldiers helped their communities by making these soups? Well, I have a little video to watch and we can recount.
Partner or the screen, we're going to recount the story Bone Button Borscht. However, you can use a resource to help you. Our notes can help. This is our escape chart. Here's the chart we use to take notes for Bone Button Borscht. Notes on the escape chart are useful when recounting a text from a read aloud. Be sure to include the title of the book and something from each box. Are you ready? Pause the video now to recount the story of Bone Button Borscht.
So you can use this chart. You can use this chart to help you read through. So if it were me, I would start off with my setting. I might tell my learning partner, in Bone Button Borscht, there was a town, and in the town there lived a beggar and some townspeople, and the beggar needed a place to stay. But the townspeople didn't want to help him, so he found a shamus, right, who helped him bring the community together by making a soup. You can recount it however you would like, but that's just an example of how you might recount the story.
Something from each box? Here's how I recounted the text. Bone Button Borscht takes place in a small town. The characters are a beggar, some townspeople, and a shamus. The beggar needs food and a place to eat, but the townspeople don't share their food. Eventually, the beggar tricks the townspeople into making soup together. In the end, all the townspeople share the soup called borscht. We're now ready to answer this question. How does food nourish a community? Think about Bone Button Borscht and Stone Soup. How did food nourish their communities? We're going to have more chances to talk about these texts in this lesson. Today, you will compare Bone Button Borscht and Stone Soup. We have already recounted Bone Button Borscht. Now let's recount Stone Soup. Here's the chart we used to take notes for Stone Soup. The notes are on the scape chart. The notes on the scape chart are useful when recounting a text from a read aloud. Be sure to include the title of the book and something from each box. Are you ready? Pause the video now to recount the story of Stone Soup. I am sure you remembered to include something from each box, and I bet it sounded wonderful. Now that we've recounted both texts, we're going to think about some ways the stories are similar or alike. Can you think of some ways? I want you to pause the video now and talk with your learning partner or think aloud. Try to think of at least 2 ways these stories are alike. Great work. I wonder what you talked about. I think there are so many ways that these 2 stories are similar. I thought about how they both involve towns or communities that don't really share with each other. I also thought about how the beggar and the 3 soldiers are similar characters. They both trick the townspeople into making soup. I wish I could hear some similarities that you shared. Now, let's think about some ways that these 2 stories are different. Think carefully. Pause the video now and think of at least 2 ways these stories are different. You can talk to your learning partner or think aloud. Wonderful! Let's see. First, I thought about how there are 3 soldiers in Stone Soup, but just the beggar in Bone Button Borscht. Then I thought about how in Bone Button Borscht, it seemed like the townspeople are much more hidden away than the townspeople in Stone Soup. In Stone Soup, the townspeople are just hiding away their food because they don't have a lot. But in Bone Button Borscht, the townspeople won't even answer their door or come out of their homes. Now, let's think some more about the characters from the 2 books. The 3 soldiers in Stone Soup and the beggar in Bone Button Borscht. Let's use our skills to answer this question. In your opinion, are the soldiers from Stone Soup or the beggar from Bone Button Borscht more helpful in nourishing the community? Remember that nourish means to give something to help you live and grow. Foods that nourish your body help you live and grow strong. Things that nourish a community help it live and grow strong. Pause the video now to talk to your learning partner, the screen, or jot a note. In your opinion, are the soldiers or the beggar more helpful in nourishing the community? Did you say that the soldiers were more helpful in nourishing the community? If so, stand up and say yes. Did you say that the beggar was more helpful in nourishing the community? Stand up and say yes. I'm so curious about what you said your opinion was. Whether you chose the beggar or the soldiers, I hope you used evidence from the text. Since we've talked about how the beggar and the soldiers nourish their community, Now let's think about how the soldiers nourished themselves and how the beggar nourishes himself. We are going to complete these sentences. The soldiers nourish themselves by, the beggar nourishes himself by. On a sheet of paper, complete these sentences. Pause the video now to write your responses. Amazing work! Let's see. I wrote that the soldiers nourished themselves by getting the townspeople to make stone soup. And I wrote that the beggar nourishes himself by tricking the townspeople into making borscht. Both of them solve their problems in similar ways. Great work! Now that we've compared the two books, let's think a bit about what we've learned. On a sheet of paper, please make this chart, what I know and what I can do. Pause the video to fill in this chart. You can use words and pictures to list a couple of things that you've learned and a couple of skills you've gained. Pause the video now to fill in the chart. Under what I know, maybe you put that borscht is a type of soup. A community is a group of people who share a connection, and sharing food can bring a community together. If you put something else, that is absolutely okay. You may have gained some new knowledge. When we think about what we can do, here's what I put. I can now write an opinion paragraph. I can recount bone button borscht and stone soup. And I can talk about the similarities and differences between the two books. It is so good to reflect on all that we've learned. You can continue to add to your what I know and what I can do chart after this lesson. It's good to think about what you now know and what you can do. Speaking of good, you did very good work today in recounting bone button borscht and stone soup and answering our question, how does food nourish a community? Thank you for all of your hard work.
Nice job, guys. Okay, so let's close out of this. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we worked on today, and then we will wrap up. Okay, so you guys have learned so many things this year. Just in the last 2 weeks, look at all of the things that you have learned. Writing an opinion paragraph, that is something totally new. So give yourself a pat on the back for working so hard on that yesterday, because that was a totally new skill that you had to learn when we were not in our classrooms. So nice job in sticking with that and learning how to write an opinion paragraph while you were at home. Okay, you read so many books while we were away, right? I think we've read 5 books together while we have been apart. So nice job in focusing on reading all of those books. And you have done all kinds of exit tickets and answered questions in a way using electronic format that you were not used to. So way to go on being so flexible and such a risk taker on learning something new that we didn't know before. Okay, your last thing for this lesson today, I want you to practice one more day on your fluency passage. So you remember you are reading it to follow all of the punctuation. Make sure you're concentrating on phrasing. So you're taking those little natural pauses. You're speaking loudly enough for your reader to hear you. And you're going at an appropriate speed that makes it easy to understand. I want you to go finish the exit ticket for today's lesson. Stand up and wave your arms in the air and pat yourself on the back. You have finished your virtual learning for this year for Wit and Wisdom. So nice work, scholars. I hope that you have a wonderful summer. Don't forget to read your fluency passage and keep reading all summer long. If you need to get a hold of me for any reason, I will be here. There is my contact information, and I will hopefully see you all soon. Bye, guys. Have a good day.